Hello, everyone. This is Women Talk Construction, and I'm Angela Gardner, one of your co hosts, and I am here with Christy Powell, the other
Hey,
co host. How are you today, Christy?
good. How are you doing, Angela?
I'm great. And we have already had three wonderful conversations, and we are about to have our fourth today with
Whoa.
Eileen. Eh, I mean, wait till you hear about her and what she is doing at the National Building Museum. But I'm going to open up this conversation with when I love to sometimes share with some of my peers about our guests that are coming on, just to because I just think they're all amazing, and I can't believe I get to have a conversation with them, but. And so one of my friends who has some young kids, she immediately sent me a text or a video text of her kids visiting the museum last summer and playing with the Legos. They were so excited. And I think I've actually been to several events there in DC there at the museum. So what about you, Christy? Have you been to some events there?
I have been to one, and I want to say that my favorite experience was the first time I was in there because when you walk in, it's just grand, right?
Is
Everything
it?
is grand and it's beautiful. And
It's all lit up too, right?
yeah, and I know not everybody that listens to our podcast knows a lot about construction, but the millwork in that place was just
Oh, wow.
to die for. Just beautiful, beautiful pieces of millwork and artistry.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
artists that put those things together. It was
Craftsmanship.
beautiful. We had I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly what we were celebrating. I want to say Kohler
Yes.
was, yeah, Kohler, actually, that we were celebrating his legacy, if I remember right.
Yep. 150th anniversary at our gala. And so they received our,
Yeah,
our
that
honor
gala was
award.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
literally had to go out with my sister and find an outfit because that was the first real gala I wanted to dress up for. So I'm
We
not
bring the
used.
fashion too. I like to bring the fashion. So yeah.
Yeah, I am not I was not that girl for many years. So, stepping into this role, I've had to learn how to dress a little bit. So, what's your favorite part, Eileen, about the National Building Museum? Because coming from you, you know all the details, right? So
Hmm.
I would love to know what's been one of your favorite just memories of the National Building Museum.
Well, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to speak to you both today. Christy, it's so good to see you again. And I was really honored to be asked to talk with you today. There's so many things I could say. Like, let me zoom out. I think from like the building perspective, if you haven't been there before, the National Building Museum was built in the 1880s as the pension bureau for the museum for the country, right? So like you're coming out of the Civil War, and you have all these Union soldiers that need to process pensions. They want to make this big grand building. And simultaneously, when they're building the building, the federal government in DC is sort of being like, you know what, we need like a big, awesome space for big events. And so probably the first event that they had there was Grover Cleveland's inaugural ball. And since then, we host the inaugural balls like for almost every presidency. So the building itself, when you walk in, it had the largest interior Corinthian columns in the world. I mean, and so it's one of those things where just your jaw drops. It's a national historic landmark in a town full of incredible monuments and beautiful architecture and buildings. It is still the building. It's still a stunner. There's a terracotta frieze around the whole building, so it's amazing. And I guess that ties to probably my one of my favorite moments was when decided to take the job. I'd been appointed. I was never going to move to DC. I'm a New Yorker, and I came in and I wanted to show my kids the museum, and in New York, I had ran a botanical garden, so they had all these gardens to run around, and they were sort of like, it's going to be one building, I have six. They were 6-year-old at the time, 6-year-old twins, and they walked in the door and they opened up, and they just looked up at the columns, and they just just took off running around like airplanes. They were all around there, and I'm like, oh, they get it.
Oh,
So that was a
yeah.
really, really good moment to
Nice.
understand how people experience that
Mhm.
incredible, incredible space and scale.
It is beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your role as the president and executive director of the National Building Museum. That's a pretty big lift that you've taken on as a role, because you gotta have your hands in a lot of things every single day. And what do your responsibilities entail?
Yeah, sure. Yes, it is a incredible role. And I mentioned that I didn't see myself moving to DC, but it wasn't until, that this opportunity came across, and I said, that's not for me. And one of my mentors was like, this is you. The National Building Museum is looking for its next leader, and it's you. And there's a bunch of reasons why, and once I really looked at it, and I was like, wait a minute, like this museum we are chartered by Congress. We are legislated to be our country's, our nation's museum for how we design and build. And I thought, at this moment in time, when we're coming out of COVID, when we're facing climate crises and equity and public health, and literally how we are going to build our buildings and our communities is going to shape, it's crucial to humanity. I mean, it's not that dramatic to say what a big deal it is. I felt such a calling. I'm like, I have to do this. And so for me, like, being the head of the museum, it's really about setting the vision, and deciding what the priorities are. And I think, a museum that's about the quote, the built environment. Built environment is so huge, right? It's so huge that people don't even know what that means.
Yeah,
we ask visitors, does the built environment affect your life? And they're like, not really. And you're like, oh, were you on a road? Do you live in a house? Do you go to school? You're like, so we realized we have to break it down a little bit more. And so, I kind of created our four institutional pillars. Those pillars for us are equity, environment, innovation, and wonder. And those are the four sort of impact areas we think we have, and the ways that we like to talk about why building matters, how you can be, how we can empower and inspire, our next generation of design and build thinkers, like to how we can kind of get more people into that. And then how we can also, bring together, I think one of the strengths of the museum is our convening power. We bring together people from across every vertical of the industry. Like, it's the architects, the developers, the materials, the supply, the zone people, the community, and have real conversations across the board. So to kind of de-silo the big picture of how we can kind of move forward. And so for me, and it has to be human-centered stories. Like people can, and as a museum and I, as a museum professional, our business is storytelling. Like, you have to make these things matter to people, and people want to know what matters to their daily life, and so we have an opportunity to really like tell those stories that make people look around their world very, very differently and see how and why things are built the way they are and how they can get involved. So I get to kind of really set that vision and work with a lot of incredible people across the industry, including my incredible board of directors. And then really, I see myself as a leader, empowering my leaders to do their best work, whether it be in operationalizing the institution itself, creating great exhibitions, writing great curriculum, and always, raising money. So, yeah.
I love that your story and your role is actually going to spark a lot of interest in young women that are listening to our podcast.
I hope so.
That's really what it's all about, right? Is they're listening to you with your visionary mind and with your young, spunky, like, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need. This is the vision that we're going to have. And that you're leading a change in the museum because of your creative mind. And, a lot of young girls can't see themselves in a position like the title says, but they can see themselves in a position like what you just said. And I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing that with the audience.
Oh no, that is such a privilege to be able to inspire young women. I think I won't even preach to this choir, because you guys are the choir, about how much more we need women in the building industries, but I think I say to any and all women, you are so much more qualified than you think you are for so many things, and you really have to, like, intentionally, I think, as women, like, dig a little deeper, think a little more creatively about everything you've done in your life, whether it's school, whether it's being on the captain of your soccer team, whether it was you did improv, whatever it is, all of those are skills that you've acquired to bring yourself to be ready where you are right now to do whatever's next. Like we just have to kind of, I think, work harder at that mindset than men do. Not to make a big generalization, but we do. I think we do. We have to tell ourselves a great story about ourselves to really position ourselves for the next great opportunity.
Yes, I love that.
Oh yeah, I love that. You are so much more qualified than you think. Definitely a writer downer.
Yes.
So, with your extensive experience in cultural institutions and botanical gardens, which, by the way, I love to go visit those, how do you see the role of the National Building Museum in promoting architecture and design? Because that's so important, in the building industry. How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, the museum has I would say traditionally been a space for elevated thought leadership around architecture and been very, very design heavy. I think our most legacy program is something called Spotlight on Design. And, if you look back at, when people used to convene in person all the time, like let's say, in the public programs in the 90s, you had hundreds of people that would come and, listen to Ai Weiwei or whoever whatever, when Starchitect was an actual term, we really brought those folks in and we had that. But I think design intent and design thinking is something that we break down well across every sort of spectrum of our audience. We sort of see ourselves, if you talk about quote unquote workforce development, we see we're not a training center, it's not what we do, but we are an exposure point, right?
Yes.
And that those exposure points can be super, super, super critical. So one of our like one of our programs that we've had for a long time is called City by Design, and we're elevating that right now. But for a decade, it's bringing in like recycled materials and toilet paper rolls, et cetera, and designing cities together. And we have so many programs like that put you as a youth, in the seat of a designer, and to start thinking about the fact that those choices are made and those choices profoundly affect your life. And then as we get to like classes that many of our programs are, you can get continuing education credits through AIA, et cetera. And so you're kind of getting to be in conversation with and hearing and learning about process also of design. Like we're a very process-based place. We don't just show the finished product. We really like to talk about how things are made and designed, and then kind of connect that together to then how they're built and what that back and forth is. And so I think the mandate is huge. I mean, I take it I say to myself every single day, we are literally chartered by Congress to be the nation's museum to talk about this. Like we have to tell a national story, and we have to really, really think about how profoundly impactful that is. How the design of the built environment around you right now, especially when we're undergoing. I call this time period the greatest transformation of urban life since World War II, when you're looking at what's happening in cities right now. So all that is now a rambling way of saying, I think our mandate is high, and I think our opportunities are huge. And I think we do a really excellent job, I think, of approaching it from a bunch of different audiences in a bunch of different ways. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like the interactive approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, and before this, you mentioned Botanical Garden. I had the privilege of being the CEO of Snug Harbor Cultural Center and Botanical Garden, and that the landscape design of that was also incredible. And that was also a lot about historic preservation, which a lot of my work has been about. It's been about adaptive reuse of kind of sweeping historical sites or landmarks, and like how do you turn it around for cultural activation. And so that's also like an incredible aspect, right, of design and design build challenges right now of kind of meeting more current sustainability mandates, but while preserving some of the incredible architecture that needs to be preserved also. So it's a big balance there also, but it was an incredible opportunity. Very exciting.
So as a leader in their field, what challenges do you face? Obviously, you mentioned a few already in creating engaging and accessible exhibits and programs for a diverse audience. You talked a little bit about that, but tell us some of the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them, because we all face challenges, right, in our roles. It doesn't matter what you do.
Absolutely.
Tell us if you've got a one in particular or a couple that you want to share and just how you overcame them.
Yeah, I'll talk about how overcoming. I don't know if I overcame, but
Yeah.
and I think also
It's a work in progress, right?
Exactly. But I think straight out the gate, it's the adage of seeing challenges as opportunities, right? As opposed to seeing challenges as just roadblocks or U-turn, whatever. Like, so that's always trying to do that. But I think in my industry, it's just a totally new world of how people want to consume content and how they want to be together.
Yes.
You know, like a lot of people are just taking in their quote unquote culture from their couch. Like, so what makes somebody want to come to a museum, right? Like what's the difference? Like, why? You know, when we're becoming so, or we're just, you know, looking at our phone all day. So it's a really different world, and it's challenging a lot of museums. But I really like to think, and I think it's human nature to want to be together. To want to, and to want to collectively, simultaneously experience something with someone. There's a different thing between, you know, you and I being like, hey, last night, did you watch that show? Yeah, I watched it too, versus sitting together and experiencing something together is impactful. And so I think I would, in terms of a success where we've tried to attack both those things. We just opened an exhibition in January that we've been working on for years that is a somewhat permanent exhibit, and it's called Building Stories, and it's about the built environment through the lens of children's literature. So it's mostly it's an intergenerational exhibition that is like incredibly nostalgic for all of us, you know, in our 30s, 40s, and my parents, and then it's also incredibly impactful for a K through 3 audience. Really, the idea there is we really look at our we experience the built world around us often early on in the pages of books where we're finding out who we are and we're trying to determine our place in the world. And I think there's two things there. One is that we created content that we think is appropriate and exciting for multiple generations. So if we're trying to get audiences to come to something, this is something, and we're not trying to be something for everybody. Not every exhibit can be something for everyone. Some things are really targeted, but this is encouraging and going to delight a family of many different ages. So like, that's one thing we have to do. And then the other thing we did on this, which I think is successful, is we partnered with the DC Public Library System. So there will be a kiosk about building stories in every ward. Those are all throughout the District of Columbia. And so in order to reach audiences, you have to have more creative strategies and you have to engage with your community. And so this is an example of us, you know, if you're not going to walk into the museum, you are going to walk into your local library, and maybe the library will bring you back to the museum. So those are like two ways where, you know, we're kind of we understand what's going on, and we're trying creatively to get more people.
Yeah. I think it's going to switch. I think people are starting to realize that we need to be together.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the things you've been at recently where everyone's like, oh my God, it feels so good to be here. It's
and
so
that,
like,
exactly.
You know,
the energy is totally different than it was before COVID, right? Like the energy before COVID is, oh gosh, I got another thing to go to. And now it's like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. Let's get together again for coffee or whatever, instead of, you know, text me later or send me an email. It's like, let's get together. So
I agree.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh yeah. Now she already answered a couple of our other questions, but actually
That's okay.
one of them I did want to ask about the collaboration part with the other organizations, because it's very important that, you know, others hear that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that one was that more of a local level that you were doing it or was that national too?
Oh, the library is just a local level, but we have collaborations across
So that's my question.
Many.
National. Yeah. Who do you collaborate with nationally?
No.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of trade and industry organizations. I mean, I guess I'll call out too. The American Institute of Architects is a great partner of ours, a long-standing partner. So AIA, and the National Association of Home Builders is an amazing partner of ours. They, they supported this most recent exhibition, and we have a partnership with them where we are the content that we develop, like the curriculum and other sort of like out of school network things we're sharing now with them, and then they're sharing with their like girls and boys clubs networks, et cetera. It's like we're always talking with on both of those levels, like how do we be, there's so many values we're aligned on, there's so many things we all mutually care about, so how do we we be more collectively impactful and, find the ways to collaborate that are helpful to everybody, and there's so many ways of that. Like we're a cultural institution. Our point is to like reach people. We're not lobbying, we're not advocating, so there's so many different ways though that we feel so, I think, aligned. And so those are two. I mean, and there's many like that where we kind of like we benefit from the thought leadership, like the real access to what's happening on the ground in these industries. What do you need to see more? What does the general public need to know more about? How can we better educate the next generation? How do we demystify whatever it is, carbon capture to this, to that, and we kind of like can really work at a big macro level with some of these national institutions to make sure that we're all kind of like moving the needle where we want to. So it's been really, really, really incredible partnerships. Yeah.
National Association of Women in Construction. I know one of those groups is going to pull together women confidence builders and themselves, and we're going to try to attend an event this year in 2024. So that's our goal for this year. So they're a big organization and national organization, but this particular group is Libby Mandriata is the president of the NAWIC. I want to say in
DC?
Maryland.
Maryland?
I want to say it's Maryland. You might be right. It might be Metro Washington. It could be
Metro Washington.
Because she's real close.
Yeah.
She actually came and met you that day for lunch, Aileen, when I got to meet you too. Anyway, really excited about that. Really excited about getting our young girls to see what's going on at the National Building Museum. We think that's going to be a real game changer for them to see that building, to see what's going on, whether it be, I don't know which event in particular we're going to try to attend together, but just them seeing the majesty of that building is going to be a game changer for those young girls.
We just brought in a group of young women, rising leaders in the International Masonry Institute.
Nice.
It was like 24 women that came in, and we have this incredible. We also are a collecting institution. We have an incredible brick collection, and so we got them to come in, and they got to check out the collection and see what we do. And then I told them about my story, and everyone was just like, "Oh my, I can't even believe this." It's amazing to watch. Those light bulbs go off for people when they see us. Yeah.
So what are your goals and aspirations for the National Building Museum? We could talk forever. What are your goals and aspirations for the museum? How can we help you get more word out? Obviously, having you on the show today is probably going to help get some word out, right, to all the women that listen to our podcast and men and organizations. But also, when you're answering that question, throw in a few things that you'd like to see for the next generation to be looking towards for the museum. What are your aspirations for both? Where do you see the museum going, and what would you like to see? But also, how would you like the next generations to see the museum in the future?
I think all of that probably wraps around the word of relevance. I'd like to lead the museum into increasingly national prominence and relevance, and really be seen as that institution that, if you are interested in design and construction, the National Building Museum, full stop, and if you are a emerging leader to an established leader, you support the museum, full stop, because it's, you just see it that way. And so that, with that comes a huge accountability that I put on myself then to deserve that relevance, and I think that we're doing that in a really methodical way. We've looked at our audiences from a bunch of different layers, and I think on our family audience between Brick City, which you had mentioned, Brick City is the Lego based exhibition, this building story, some of the things that we're doing, we have that family audience, and then we have another initiative called Future Cities, where that has a whole bunch of expressions coming out over the next 3 years, in terms of really looking at that at the future of our vibrant urban spaces across the country. And then a third tier is construction innovation. So we have a design concept right now for a construction innovation space. And that's something I think that would be incredibly exciting to work with you all on, and to work with any and all young women on. This is a space that's super. to me, it's like, we're the National Building Museum. There's a couple of things that we just should have there. And one of those should be a dedicated space that's about the incredible innovation that's happening across the industry, and make it be exciting and palpable and accessible to somebody who maybe stumbled upon it. As we kind of have to do that, and also very, very useful for other sorts of like charrettes or thoughts. But I think that's really on us to attract more people in different ways, to understand the pathways within these industries that are really exciting, really relevant, and are going to be completely stabilizing and satisfying for you as an individual in your life, for women. And I think part of that also across the board, and I hear this a lot, is just it can't be architecture over here and construction over here. It's just not how we, right? Like that has
engineering can't be in its own
to come together.
Yeah.
And it's shocking how much sometimes it's not. And everybody's trying to sort of solve it in these like siloed ways. And so, where can the museum also be helpful, bringing those voices into conversation, I think would be really exciting. And I also think the museum, then we can't be shy from tackling big social issues and really putting those front and center. We did a big exhibit about the border wall, not as a political issue, as a built environment story. We're looking at mass incarceration, prison design. We're doing things that are like, I think are going to be cutting edge and allows us to be sort of responsive to the biggest things that are affecting all of our lives right now. So I guess that's what I'd like to see us do, is really
I think
be
that's
that
a good
place.
vision.
Yeah.
That's a great vision.
It is. And that's a
And
lofty
it's a lot of
one, but you can do
responsibility.
it. Yeah.
What can we do to help?
Yeah.
I mean, this is things like this is so. Thank you again for for inviting me. I have this thing in my head from the first time I went to the International Builder Show, which I hope I will see you guys both at.
Yes, I will be there.
Yay! Was 2 years ago, and there was I was kind of going around the floor a lot and meeting the builders across our country, right? And
the salt of the earth is what
right. And I would say
them.
75% of them had no idea what the National Building Museum was. And when I was able to kind of concisely say what we are, everybody, there was this sentiment. They were like, "Oh, I didn't know we had a museum," and I almost like I could. I'm like,
wow.
That's it. It is. That's what I want you to think. I want you to understand. It's we. I want you, anytime you want to bring your kids to Washington D.C. over the summer, to to come to this museum, because you're going to be welcomed. It's going to be a celebration of what you do. And so I guess it's just helping us get that word out there, and we're going to keep doing our part to establish that trust and be that place, and just send it anybody and everybody there. Yeah.
Okay. We can do
It's on
that.
you, Christy. It's on you, Angela. Do it.
We
got
can do
it.
it.
We got it.
Yes.
So with that being said, thank you for being on. We really appreciate you today. Let our audience know, how do they get involved with the museum? How do they get involved with you? How do they find you? How do they support you? So if our listeners have access to resources, capital, ways to bring millions of people to look at the building museum.
Have a vacation. Go there, visit.
That?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, our website is easy, nbm.org. That's National Building Museum. So that's always a good start. But also, I'm not shy. My email is afuchs@nbm.org. Like,
and she does answer it.
Reach out.
Yeah.
I mean, reach out to us. Come attend. When we are open, Thursday to Monday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So come visit, come see what we're doing. We're doing something super cool and fun this summer that I can't say what we're doing, but it's going to be so wildly amazing. Think about world record breaking. Wink.
Nice.
So there's going to be lots of opportunities. Like, come join our mailing list and see what we're doing. Come visit us. That's it.
Love it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for
sharing the
having
wonderful
me.
things that you're doing for our industry. We really appreciate you,
Yes,
Aileen.
thank you.
Thank you.